Welcome to the CFA Connections Plain Talk series. This is a special 5-part video series on how to become a corporate flight attendant. Starting with a complete overview on how to navigate the CFA Connections platform pages, start here, and how to become a CFA. This is a complimentary and robust step-by-step guide on how to start your career as a corporate flight attendant. We include numerous resources, training and career development programs, scholarship opportunities, mentorship programs, and more. In the other videos in this series, I have one-on-one conversations with corporate flight attendants, and we discuss how they became corporate flight attendants, as well as what they wish they had known when starting their careers. These are all not to miss discussions. Let's get started. I think the most confusing thing, or people may not be aware of, is all of the variables and differences in this industry, and it's not a cookie cutter job or job description. And
Right.
trying to explain that to a corporate America person for corporate aviation, it's quite a daunting task to explain it in detail that it's going to resonate and they're going to understand it.
Yeah, I agree. And the same even with commercial flight attendants hoping to make the change. It went a certain way for me, but I could put a lot of money on the table and guarantee it's not going to go the same way for you, even if I give you a step-by-step directive of what you should be doing.
Yeah, because I transitioned from the airlines too. It was 20 years ago, and it's a whole different industry now. But I know and I think, without coming across rude, but not every commercial flight attendant can transition and become a corporate flight attendant. There's a lot of them think it's very easy, and it's not. These are completely polar opposite jobs, and they have to do with aviation, and the training that you get and the experience in commercial. It's a good foundation, but not much carries over into corporate.
I couldn't agree more with that. Um, the amount of work that you do on your downtime or your layover, you just can't compare the two types of flying. On the commercial side, you have your layover and you get to the hotel and you really don't need to think about anything until you get on the shuttle to go back to the airport for your next flight. And on the corporate side, you have to think about catering, and if there's an event, any sort of decorating. Do you have to make up jet beds? There's so many different factors, and that's all during your layover or your downtime. So, you work on an airplane, you do step on an airplane and you're in the service industry, but it's completely different.
I totally agree. And was that a hard transition for you? I mean, I made the transition, and it was so vastly different that it was very exciting. And I think I adapted rather quickly. Was there any surprises for you when you made the transition?
I I think catering was the most stressful for me because sometimes I don't even know what I feel like eating for dinner. And if you don't get a passenger preference sheet and you just kind of have to guess, and the catering companies are so expensive. So you have to either stick within a budget, or you don't want to be too frivolous with what you're ordering, but you have to cover all of your bases. And I think catering, as funny as it sounds, was the thing that like stressed me out the most about the transition.
No, I totally agree. Did you do a straight transition, or did you overlap before?
I was in a unique position because I broke my hands at the airlines and I was on leave because I couldn't work. I had a broken hand. And I just happened to come across a job alert for a flight attendant, and I clicked on it and I was like, oh, on a private jet. Like, that sounds fun. Let's see when it's for. And it was close to when I was getting my cast removed and I decided to apply. I'm like, I'm a flight attendant. I've been flying for 5 years. Like, I could just go fly in a private jet. I had no idea. And so I contracted with them for a little bit. And then before my leave was fully over, I decided that I wanted to make corporate my full-time focus rather than go back to the commercial world and try to balance both.
I
Yeah.
think you hit on it too, because I had no idea. When I got the call from a couple that was starting a business in South Florida here in business aviation, they were going to do staffing of cabin crew. And I'm like, sure. Had no idea what business aviation was. And I find it fascinating, because that was a while ago. And still recently, people still have no idea because it's private aviation and
Right.
how, until you're immersed in the industry, we see it all and experience it all, but it's still locked down and
Right.
so to speak in a lot of areas. And it's hard to find out that information. If you think back when you were starting out and made the transition, is there anything that just really pops in your head like, wow, I wish I would have done this before I started, or I wish I would have known that before I started that I do now that would have helped me transition into this career or start my career for most people that are watching?
Absolutely. I was humbled pretty early on. Um, that trip we were talking about earlier, the contract trip that I worked right after breaking my hand. Uh, so they did hire me for that trip, and I thought I was going to have a lot of work coming in after that. I didn't realize how difficult it would actually be and how persistent you have to be to get work. And something that I wish I would have done, we all know about networking, and I think when we hear that word, we think about networking with other corporate flight attendants out there, or visiting the FBOs and seeing what kind of flying they're doing and if they could pass on a resume for you. But I would have utilized my pilots earlier. And I would have said, hey, if you know of anyone who is looking for contract help, like, can I give you a resume, or will you send me a message and try to make that connection for us? And I think that could have opened more doors for me in the beginning, rather than, just trying to build my network with other corporate flight attendants. I think pilots are a great resource. And just to piggyback off of that, I think that you should treat the pilots how you treat your passengers. And I've seen what you've done when you have those empty legs for boss lady, and you're cooking your bolognese in the galley for your pilots. I absolutely think the pilots deserve a hot towel and food prepared the same way that the passengers get at the same level of service, because they are an incredible resource.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And it's because they're such an important part of the team and with
Right.
you. And that's where, I think back of, I was 17 years in the commercial airline and I literally could count on one hand how many times I had dinner or a meal with the pilots.
Mm-hmm.
In corporate aviation, it's like reverse. That's how many times I don't,
Right.
because it's such a family and you all have one unified goal of the success of the clients. If you're flying for private owners, it's a whole different shenanigan versus, being, for contractor and charter, but
Mm-hmm.
you all have that unified goal. And pilots in corporate aviation, I think, are much more customer service savvy.
Yes. Yeah, because we all have the same mission.
Pick your brain on this too, once, and doing the research, but also knowing when to pay for your training, when it's a smart time to make that investment, because yes, it's a self-finance investment and it's a
Yeah.
big investment. But as soon as you pay for your cabin safety training, the expiration clock starts ticking because your
Mm-hmm.
currency is only good for a year for 135 for charter. And that's where, if you have the cart in front of the horse and you jump right in and do your training without doing the research to find out what the market is and the areas and, the needs of finding work, that clock is not on your side.
Right. Yeah, it could become very expensive trying to find work. Yeah. Yeah, 2 training sessions, you're up $10,000. And I don't know many people who are working who are in a position to throw away $10,000 like that. So yeah, it's knowing how the industry functions, before you decide to invest, is insanely important. And that's why I mention pretty often it really matters what training that you take. You can't just, Google flight attendant training near me and hope it's going to be the best, because some of them aren't even recognized, or some companies only want X, Y, and Z training. So if you get a resume and X, Y, and Z isn't on there, the company will throw away that resume without even seeing how much experience you have, or anything like that. So,
Exactly. And that's where I always find it confusing that someone just selects the first thing that comes up on their Google. Their success story with all the vendors,
yes,
but it's regional also because there's two that have multiple locations and all the other ones have one location. And their general area or state usually recognized because that's their region. And so
right.
people are familiar with them. But on a national level or even an international level, the recognition, then it gets into the name game. And that's where you have to do your research and get the data and ask questions.
Mhm.
And that was why, I've had, the Start Here page up on the connection since inception, 2 years. And just recently I rearranged it, put mentoring right at the towards the top of the list because I think that's a critical thing is to get a mentor. And
Yes,
at least if not a person, then go into discussion groups and ask these questions. And most likely you're going to get some volunteer mentors that are going to
yes.
respond to you, corporate flight attendants that have learned the hard way and share their experiences. And I think that's a really important thing. And now there's so many outlets now for mentoring because
Mhm.
there's mentors that that are just independent, that donate their time to mentor, and there's mentorship basically services like Women in Corporate Aviation and Flight Ally that will assign you a mentor, a corporate flight attendant or a leader or manager that can mentor you as a one-on-one whenever you need the support and direction. And then there's mentorship programs now. And those are really starting to launch and there's becoming more and more available, but that's a more robust program. It's not just mentorship, but it's also training or coaching that's involved too. Because I think that's really important because this job is just so overwhelming and confusing when you're starting out and there's so many what if scenarios. And I always said in my sessions, you can ask me 1,001 what ifs and I'm going to have 1,001 answers. And then you ask someone else and they're going to give you different responses because a lot of
Exactly.
this is subjective, but we're talking and answering and responding from what we know and what we experience. And so it's just best practices. And I think that's a huge key. I mean, if I would have started in this career and had a mentor, it may be a whole different experience that I had in the beginning. But
Mhm.
we really didn't have the facility to do that then.
Right. Yeah, it was harder to connect back then.
And when you started, did you have a mentor or did you just jump in blindly and just did it?
No, like I jumped in blindly. I thought flight attendant equals flight attendant. I've got it. So there were not mishaps, but there were a lot of things that I learned along the way. And it would have been nice, going into corporate aviation, walking onto a private jet, knowing how things operated rather than kind of taking a guess at how things should go. I had training and things like that, but I didn't have a mentor, and a mentor would have been very helpful.
Just to confirm that you're not alone. Am I the only one thinking this or experiencing this? And we're all like, no, we've all done that. We've all
Right.
had the horror stories, we've all made the mistakes, and let's share them. And I think that's basically the blessing and the curse of social media. I
Yeah,
think for our industry, for corporate flight attendants, I think it's been hugely beneficial and just put so much in the forefront because everyone's sharing so much now on social media, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and being real. But I think having those resources and the support and actually seeing what other people are doing, it's a whole different ballgame now, I think.
absolutely. Absolutely. I've gotten some of my best ideas from watching Instagram stories, you
It's
know?
true. I get inspired every day.
It's amazing. I love that. You bookmark it and you come back to it and it's I mean, it's free training from 100 different people, who are doing the same thing that you're doing.
Exactly. And I love that. I love the whole sharing aspect. And it's just been a huge shift change, a paradigm shift in our industry because, there's still, I know some that don't support as openly as others, but it's become a very supportive community
Yes.
and with sharing and just, I mean, celebrating each other, I think is just it's just an amazing thing to witness these days.
Yeah,
Because
it definitely is.
we
And I feel
work alone. It's a lonely job.
it truly is. It truly is. And I feel like that shift happened pretty recently. Like I'm only 5 years into this gig, and even in the beginning, I didn't feel like there were people sending online high fives and encouragement and, share your successes, or if you had a failure, what could you do differently? Like, let's talk to each other and have these discussions and let's help make each other better. Like, I feel like that's a pretty new thing that came along, and it's a pretty awesome thing that came along.
I agree. I think the shift conservatively started about 5 years ago that I think I've witnessed over social media. Especially Instagram really exploded our industry. We've had Facebook and there's been discussion groups, but having the visual and the video aspect too with Instagram that they brought to the platform, it just did a whole shift change for us. And now it's just, yeah, there's no reason for someone to start or venture into this career and not have the ammunition to be fully informed before making a decision, as far as
Right.
I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree completely. So you can reach out and someone will get back to you.
And
Or
that's
there's
the
people
thing,
on it,
because all of us are approachable. Because I've heard, names dropped and some of these people, I'm like, wow, they're really busy. I'm surprised they were able to respond to you and help you. And they do, because we all care. And, I think that's the key to a good mentor, is that we are not threatened by new to industry
Right.
coming in and taking our job. We're not threatened by that at all. We support it, and there's a fit for everybody. And is this market saturated? We don't know. We don't even know how many there are of us in this whole industry. But if you're determined and really hungry for this career and work for it, because it's not going to be handed to you. And I think that's the misnomer too. Is a lot of people, they go to training and then expect the phone to ring on Monday, and it doesn't work that way. You
Yeah,
have to
there's no
work for
girls
it.
after training.
You have to work for it, and because it is a saturated market in a lot of key areas. But there's so many flight departments now where, as long as you live by an airport, you're airlining to chase the plane somewhere. So you don't have to live at base. So there's a lot of options there, I think. And flight departments have kind of done a shift change too over the years. Of they want qualified crew, got to make an exception then and get the people that you want. They may not be local talent. And
Right.
so, and just like with my private owner, we live all over the country, and we all airline into position because she wanted us to have quality of life and live where we wanted to. And she's not an ASAP trip person, so we always would know at least 24 hours in advance that we're going somewhere. So we plan that and have that. You probably get a lot of messages, as like I do, where they don't understand the scope and the depth of the responsibilities of corporate flight attendant. They see the reality, REEL,
Right.
versus
Love
the
that.
reality that we're doing behind the scenes. They're seeing the overnights and the beautiful planes that we're on, and these glamorous trips, but they're not realizing that, yeah, we get to our destination, like you said, and our job is not done. Everyone would comment when I'm at a destination, because we would be at destinations for like weeks.
Yeah, I'm very jealous of that.
And I'm like, I know it appears that, this is the glamorous life, but I'm living on someone else's vacation. This is
Right.
not my vacation. I'm
Right.
working, and yeah, we make the best of it and have fun and can be social and whatnot, but we're still on the job.
Right. Yeah, and you're representing a company. It's really not your time at all.
Exactly. And that's the thing. If your response is why you want to become a corporate flight attendant is because you love to travel, you may want to think again, because it's a
Right.
lot more involved to, yes, travel's in, part of it, but it's only the benefit of it. It's a lot of hard work.
It is. It is. And, we both talked about planning and, airplane provisions and providing catering and everything. And when you speak about it, it's someone from the outside could be listening and like, oh, like I can order food. That can't be that hard. I could buy balloons and rent a helium tank. But you have to remember, you're crossing time zones and international date lines, and your whole sleep schedule is out of whack. And sometimes, I mean, I know you've had multiple days on a layover. I'm not always that lucky. I fly for a company who bounces around and has a lot of meetings and things like that. So my layovers are pretty short. And by the time I get my feet on the ground and into the hotel room, I'm so tired. And I'm lucky if I have 11 hours in that room. but I have to do all of the work behind the scenes before I can even think about going to bed. Because when I wake up the next morning, everything's got to be ready and good to go. So, it might sound superficial, maybe, I don't know, like we're hyping it up to be a lot of work, but it's an exhausting job. It truly is.
It is. Fatigue is just the way of
Oh,
life.
so real. We were talking about that on my last trip. Yeah.
It is. It's just the nature because we don't have the luxury like the pilots to fully unplug. They're
Right.
still doing flight planning and whatnot for the return, but we're doing so much more. And we could be shopping for supplies, ordering supplies, planning the catering, writing the menu, creating the menu, doing all of this other stuff. And then the trip changes and you're
Right.
leaving sooner.
Yep.
Us detailing the cabin, when on arrival. And I mean, there's so much involved to it. And I think that's the misnomer of this career is they see the glamorous side, because we fly in the rich and famous, blah, blah, blah. But we're not the rich and famous. We're
No.
the servants to the rich and famous. We're
Yeah.
on their schedule and nobody else's.
Yeah. We're definitely the help at the end of the day. And we're the help that always has to be on too. You know, when I get to the room and I'm done with all the duties that I have to do on the layover, I'll take a breath. I'm like, is that the first deep breath I took all day? Like my cheeks hurt. Like, did I breathe at all? Have I relaxed? So it's hard to be on all day. And then you have multiple day trips and you're tense on the inside and you're not showing that on the outside. So yeah, the performance piece too.
It's true, for longer hauls, it's in addition to jet lag, you do because we are
Yeah.
on stage the whole time. And a lot of people don't realize how exhausting that is
Mhm.
alone. Then you're flying, across time zones and incorporating jet lag and then sleeping at all crazy hours and different flight schedules. And that's just, that's the difference with commercial and corporate, because we on a private jet, we're not like oh, it's 8 o'clock. They haven't showed up yet. I guess we're leaving without them.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
you
Yeah.
leave when they arrive and you
Oh,
go. But it's
right.
true. And it's crazy because even though as long as I've been doing this and I fly for a private owner who's really easy and I know them so well, you know, and I always have the backup plan for a menu. But the night before a trip, I still toss and turn. I never sleep the night before a trip, stressing about catering of all
I
things.
I
And
know.
and I have everything I could possibly fit on an aircraft and more. And I know I have it covered. I know it's going to go well, but I still stress.
Yeah, I completely feel you. You have 5 years with the same company, and I know everyone. They know me pretty well. We have great camaraderie, and yeah, I will always be nervous. Yeah,
I think because we're vested in this in having that successful flight and taking care of our clients, to the best of our abilities, we're very proud of that. I mean, it can be a humbling career too, because it is exhausting, but it's also very rewarding.
yes, absolutely.
This industry has been very good to me and I've reaped the rewards of it in different levels. But I because I stopped flying for about just over 7 years. I thought I had retired from flying when I went into executiveness and staffing and whatnot. And when I left and started my own company, I returned to flying because I thought it was important to walk the walk as a trainer and a consultant to be actually flying and saying, back in 92 when I was on a plane, and the VCR it wasn't working. I thought it was really important to go back to flying. And it was just like the best gift for my souls when I went back to flying. I didn't realize how much I missed it because I was still traveling the globe. So the itch was being scratched because I was flying all over the world doing training and whatnot, but I wasn't flying as a flight attendant, but I still wasn't doing a 9 to 5 and I still traveled. But when I returned, I'll never forget the first trip back after 7 years. It was just an exhale. It was just like, okay, I'm back home. It just
Yeah,
felt so natural.
good.
I mean,
You're a pro.
yeah, I mean, it just gets in your blood, just like
Yeah,
vitamins and stuff. It just gets in your part of your DNA. And that's where, it it's always good to have, other plans to have careers or side support outside of the cabin position, but it's also hard to give up.
Agreed. Yeah, yeah. 2020 showed us that a backup plan is always good, but it also reinstated that I don't want to be doing anything besides this.